Okay, that's good enough. For the cold open, I would like to read one of my least favorite lines from this wonderful book.
Oh man, there's lots of them.
I don't know why this one stood out to me. It's not even inherently that bad. It just, something about it just didn't sit well. Mr. Johnny Truant here. Let's see, what do we got? I wrote a bunch of notes, but it was like really late at night when I was reading these, so I just wrote like a couple words for the notes because I thought we were going to be recording last week, so they were fresh in my mind. They are no longer fresh in my mind, so some of this stuff is kind of hilarious. Like this one just says, "I hate Karen, cheater."
Cheater.
Okay.
He is a cheater.
Yeah. This one just says, "Brown Pants Pirate Story, Tom is great." Like, I did such a shitty job of writing these notes down.
That was awesome. I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, it's great. But see, I had it in my mind. Like, I know kind of what it's talking about because I remember the Tom part, but we'll get into that. Let me read this fucking awful excerpt here. For a moment, I flashed on her body, imagining those beautiful round breasts with creamy brown areolas, making saints out of nipples, her soft, full lips barely hiding her teeth. Well, in the deep over eyes, her Irish and Spanish heritage keep closing like oxygen and hydrogen, and will probably keep on closing until the very day she dies. Ugh. When I read that, I just groaned, literally just like I did out loud, just, ugh.
Man, that was some quality romantic writing. I don't know what you're talking about.
Her nipples are saints? Like, he's worshipping her nipples, I'm guessing?
I guess. It's weird. There are weirder things to worship on a person, I guess.
Yeah, and that whole thing is one sentence. There's no...
Yeah, that seems to be a trend with him.
I also... I don't want to skip too far ahead here. I don't know how... Hold on, let me see what page I'm on, by the way, because I don't... Matter of fact, let's do the fucking intro here, and then we'll get into this nonsense. But I just wanted to make that excerpt known how much I dislike it. Fucking sucked. Alright. Hey there, people. You are listening to the Drunken Pen Writing Podcast. I'm your host, Caleb James. With me today, again from Parts Unknown, Mr. Ashleigh Hatter. What's up?
How's it going, dude?
House of fucking Leaves, man. It is juicy and not in a way that I like. I am on page 423.
Let me grab this old freaking brick. I stopped at... No, that's not the right one. I was marking where I hated something.
Well, that's probably the whole book then.
That's, yeah. Let's see, I just got to 365 because I was reading that really bad, like, transcript from Karen Green, and then it goes into, like, interviewing Stephen King and David Copperfield and all that bullcrap.
Yeah, I thought that was ridiculous and unneeded.
I was like, oh, cool.
Much like most of this book. Alright, two things here. One, holy shit, I got loud. One, the basic thing is this book is one of the most frustrating books I've read. Because normally when a book just sucks, I can just bail on it. But this book has parts that are so good that you don't want to bail because you want to know what happens in the story. They just don't focus on the fucking story enough.
Yeah.
Two, I got to a part not too long ago where Johnny Truant decided to change all the S's in his words to F's. And it really, really irked me. Why? Why was it necessary to do that? Like, now I finally when I got to that point, I'm like, oh, Daniel Lusky really was just screwing with people. He just wanted to see what could get published. There's no other way about it. Like, there's no reason to do that.
Yeah, it's like you said, there's some really good storytelling in there, but it's few and far between. I think, honestly, he's got his head so far up his ass and just, thinking he's amazing. And look at me, I'm challenging all the norms. It's like, that's cool, but maybe you should challenge them one at a time.
Yeah, really.
Maybe no more than two at a time, because...
He sacrificed the structure of the story to be cool, and I just don't think it worked too well. I mean, I guess it worked for him. Became famous off of it, but I would, like I told you off air, I don't really want to read his other work now just because of the way the story's going.
Yeah, I was looking before we started this. I was thinking about starting to buy that huge tome. It's like 27 volumes or something like that.
Yeah,
the Familiar.
Yeah, I was looking into that too, but I'm definitely not doing that now.
It's like, nah, I'm good.
I'll pass. I'm gonna save this to our final episode, which I'm gonna just go ahead and assume it'll probably be the next one we record, just because it looks like I'm getting to a part that skips a whole bunch of shit. So
yeah.
I want to save this, but I do want to mention it. One thing I'm definitely gonna take away from this book is how I, as a writer, need to focus more on creating atmosphere, because he does that very well when he decides to write well.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
I also like some of his detail work, so I kind of want to focus more, but mainly the atmosphere thing. I feel like, especially even going into horror, that might be something a lot of writers, especially non-professional writers, might gloss over. And especially like in the modern, that's why I kind of put out on Twitter today asking about, modern horror, because I don't really read modern horror. I didn't think about it until now. And I don't know, like, just from when I've read, like, short story collections and stuff, a lot of writers don't focus on atmosphere and horror, and that's, like, the one thing that really makes it a horror, in my opinion. Not just people getting killed or demons and shit like that, the atmosphere.
Yeah, I think way too many people are focusing on either the gore porn aspect of it, or trying to freak you out or shock you and do shock value, but it's like, if you really want to scare people, you got to get the setting right, because... like, when you're a little kid going down into the basement and stuff, it's not seeing an actual monster that creeps you out. It's the whole, you smell the wet air of the basement, the dark, creaking stairs, everything like that. It's the atmosphere and the setting you're in that really makes it creepy. And so I'll definitely give it to old Mark Z over here, saying he got the atmosphere down really well during the staircase portions. I thought that was amazing. I love that part.
Oh yeah, that was excellent. And that kind of brings me to a part I wanted to touch on with that staircase. I don't know if you got to it yet, but he has well, you read it before, so I'm not going to really spoil anything for you. Navison, they go into his dreams a little bit, and it's one of the parts where it's dry, but I did enjoy this aspect. In his one dream, it's pretty much like he's in that grand hall. Everything's black. And instead of a staircase, it's a well. And there's people milling around. There's people sitting on the well. And then he goes over to the well and he sees it's like this water that goes into this endless blackness. And what it turns out to be is he watched some people jump into it. And when they sink into the blackness, they end up getting taken somewhere else, while others don't. So he's actually kind of in limbo there. I really like that depiction.
Yeah.
It was like almost like a station to the other side.
It was like a kind of a weird, really cool alternative take on purgatory. I thought he set it up pretty well. I don't know that it's even purgatory. It's like, it's not necessarily saying like the afterlife. It's like,
I think what they alluded to was that it was, they might even said it was a station, kind of like a waiting station. And he said some of the people there have been there for thousands of years. They don't want to go. They don't. Because you don't know, once you go into that well, you're either going, I guess, would be heaven or hell. Yeah, I guess that's kind of what, people would be scared to even try it, so they just stay in that place for thousands of years, which also I thought was kind of cool.
Yeah, it was like a really cool metaphor for life and the way people either attack it and go for it into the unknown, or they sit around the well for thousands of years.
See, that's another thing though that he does that really pisses me off. He has moments in there that are so good, just like that. And even though I want to skip some of these footnotes and some of the science gobbledygook, he does throw those things in that are really well written and make you think. And I like that. Like, I like the whole thing he had about the Minotaur. Mm-hmm. I don't remember if we talked about that the last episode or not, but I really enjoyed the whole Minotaur and the labyrinth aspect of it. But of course, that had to be all in red and crossed out, which just made me furious. Like, why? You stupid jerk.
Yeah, I don't get why he did that. That kind of messed with my eyes after a while. But I did like the Minotaur because, I mean, there's, I don't know how many allusions to the groaning and the growling and coming from the labyrinth and all over the house, and they try to come up with all these reasons. But when they're in the maze and stuff, they feel like they're being watched, and so it kind of gives this beast feeling to the house. I liked it. I thought that was a really cool illusion, King Midas and all that.
Yeah, I mean, if I could have it my way, the whole story would just be, that part of the house and maybe the Johnny Truant stuff, but none of that other shit. I think that would make for a solid read.
Yeah. But, and even I think the Johnny Truant stuff could be highly trimmed down. I got, and I'm getting kind of tired of the constant sexcapades and just, like, let's list off all the women that, Jude is sleeping with and that I'll sleep with next, and I'll interview them and see exactly how depressing their lives are. Oh my God.
That really made me feel gross. And, I mean, just a part of me kind of wants to say, hey, Mr. Johnny Truant, are you like a fucking stud muffin? I mean, you have a broke tooth and... Like, how hot is this guy that he gets these, super rich or supermodel looking chicks or strippers and all? Like, well, how? Just because he tells good stories? He has burn up arms. I mean, he can't be that attractive.
Yeah, I think it has something to do with the fact that all of them come from, like, abusive backgrounds, or, they were, like, I other than Navidson's daughter, I've not found an unbroken or quote-unquote blemished woman that isn't like, oh, I had a horrible history, so now I'm going to whore myself out or cheat on my husband and stuff like that. It's like, gosh, come on, it's like all these women are perpetual victims and they're living in a perpetual victimhood. And while I get that happens in the real world, it doesn't happen to 100% of the people that you meet. So it's like, okay, this is kind of getting ridiculous. I'm just going to assume that every woman that he talks to is some sort of sexual victim, and then every guy is just taking advantage of every woman in the story. Hey,
that's really how it plays out. I mean, even Karen's character, who I just absolutely despise, by the way, she like, they go into her infidelity a lot and stuff, and the way it's written too is like Navison's super faithful, so it just makes you want to dislike the character even more. She's definitely my least favorite character in this whole book, but they've tried to explain it away by the long, drawn-out chapter about her childhood or what makes her tick, I guess. And, again, she's abused and all this shit. It's like, why did these women, like, does Daniel Lusky realize that not every person that's abused turns out to be a drug addict, a whore, your typical stereotype stripper? It's not necessary. But he wrote every single character like that, almost.
Yeah, and I've yet to meet a character in here that's a dude that isn't just a total scuzzbag. Like, other than Navidson, the Navidson project in this book isn't technically real because Ampano was blind and all of that. So
yeah.
It's like, the only good person in this, like, morally decent person in this book isn't even real in the book.
Yeah, no.
Oh, man.
Even if you forget that for a second, the only character that I felt was well fleshed out in a positive light, even though he has negative characteristics, is Navison's brother, Tom.
Yeah.
Because Tom is like kind of the eternal optimist. But he's an alcoholic. He has a drinking problem. He has a lot of issues. But at the same time, he is like the only positive character, it really seems like. I mean, Navison, but he's obsessive and, he neglects his family for work. So, I mean, he's written in a way where, he's a cool adventure explorer guy, but at the same time, if you were married to that guy, you'd be pissed off too.
Yeah.
So I could see that aspect, but like Tom was, well, I guess Reston too, the guy in the wheelchair, he was pretty solid.
He was interesting. I thought he was, I don't know. I think if he were developed a lot more, or there was more time spent on his story, that I would have enjoyed it.
Yeah, they didn't go in, he was just kind of a side character.
Yeah, it's just kind of all of a sudden there. Like, oh, he was this, that. I was like, oh, okay.
All right, then.
I can get behind wheelchair guys. I like Professor Xavier from X-Men. That's cool.
Pretty much. He was okay. I mean, they made him, what I liked about him, and especially Tom's character, were that even when they were scared, especially Tom, because he wanted to run. That's what he did his whole life, run away from problems. And he did not. He faced them, and ultimately it led to his demise. but he was the actual hero in this story so far.
Yeah, I was pretty pissed when he died, but it was a good way for him to go. I mean, he's saving the kids, saving the family, and everything. And I was like, dude, you're gonna go out. I mean, that's a redemptive arc if ever I've seen one.
Even when he was like when they were him, Reston, and Navison go into the Great Hall and they go down that endless stairwell to the bottom, and which we'll touch on what the actual not necessarily what it is, but how it's crafted. You know, Reston, who's in the wheelchair, obviously it's going to be difficult for him to go down the stairs, but he still does, him and Navison. Tom won't go because he's scared. So they make it kind of seem that, you know, maybe Tom's the coward, he's unreliable, but he could easily run away, especially because he gets stuck up there for days while they're down there, and he can go back to the comforts of the house whenever he wants. He's the only one that's kind of in a safe spot. He doesn't. He fights for him and stays there, and they have the good bit about him telling the cheap jokes.
I love those.
Yeah, I every one of those was great. Like the one that stuck out to me was the pirate one where what was it? The captain wears a red shirt because if he gets shot, it won't show the blood, so it won't unnerve the fellow pirates. And then there's like big cannons or something coming their way, and he yells for the first lieutenant or whatever, or the first mate to grab his brown pants.
Yeah, that was like classic.
Yeah, that was good. And he had the good dose of humor, not only in the story, but it was actually used, because a lot of writers will throw in the funny character to kind of ease the tension and stuff. But Tom's was actually used as a defense mechanism to fight his fear and everything else. You know, he called the growling thing in the house the big monster or something along those lines. Mr. Monster, yeah. So he used, even near the end, he used comedy as, a defense mechanism and kind of a crutch. So I really like that development of his character. And it turned out he wasn't the coward. Like we said, he was the actual hero of the whole story. And in my opinion, the most likable of characters.
I'll say one character that I absolutely hated was Holloway.
But you were supposed to hate Holloway. He was a egotistical douche.
I know, but sometimes you can get away with liking a villain even though you hate him at the same time. I had nothing but like loathing and contempt for that douchebag. I was like, I hate everything about you.
Hitting on Navison's wife in front of him. Trying to establish dominance and be the man in the house. I like how that was written, but I wanted that guy to get the worst death, and he didn't get the worst death, which pissed me off. Like he should have got eaten by something.
Yeah, well, I mean, it kind of touched on that, didn't it?
He went mad and shot himself.
Well, it's like, yeah, I know he died that way, but it's like the house it's kind of depicted that it devours his corpse or something like that, or I don't know.
What made me What upset me most about his character arc was that, like, he's written okay, he's not going to be a likable guy, and they go into his backstory in the scientific journal bullshit, but he, he was the adventurer, and it goes into, like, when he was a football player when he's young and all this stuff, so they build I felt his character, his personality and what makes him tick was built very well. But the whole him going to conquer everything, and then he decides, he's got to kill everybody and go crazy and all this shit. It's like he could have easily got out of that situation, though. Like, I didn't understand why that happened necessarily.
Yeah, it's I'm trying to think of the words for this. It was frustrating because it was such an immediate decline. It wasn't like a gradual descent into madness or irrational action.
It was just all of a sudden.
Yeah, it was just like, oh, well, I'm a big macho guy, I can hit on men's wives in front of them and everything like that. And then all of a sudden, the house is evil, the staircase, I need to kill everyone, the gray. I'm like, okay, that kind of came out of nowhere. Were you just like a sitting sociopath just waiting for a chance to, like, I don't know.
That's kind of how they explained it later on. It was that he was just a sociopath, I guess. Like, it was going to be almost predetermined that he was going to kill somebody at some point, just given the chance. Like, that was stupid. Like, that was, to me, that was kind of maybe a cop-out. Just, he maybe didn't know what to do with those three in there. I don't know. Let's see. They had, going back touching on the stairway, because, the place moves and expands and shrinks and all this stuff. In the stairway, what I liked about it is it was like a manifestation of what the person's mind who was in there. because, you know, maybe for Tom it looks like it's endless because he's scared to go down there, but Navison, who's not scared, it's not that long, or, you know, it seems shorter. And then you have, like, when you go into a place the first time, it's like when you're a kid, everything looks so much bigger than it really is. But then when you go back again and you're kind of comfortable and you recognize things, it's not that big anymore. So that was neat how he did that.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Again, you know what? I just pinpointed why I fucking don't like this book so far for the most part. It's because every other chapter is just long info dumps. Which, you know, as a writer, one thing they always say, don't just throw in a random info dump in a book. If you can, do it as a dialogue or something like that. He has whole chapters dedicated to just info dumps. He just tells you everything that happened or the reason why it happened. It's like, come on, man.
Yeah, I made a note, and I think the reason he formatted it like this was to try to get the reader to experience what Johnny Truant was going through by going through the Navison record and everything, to kind of make the story alive in a way. To me, it didn't work, because I'm not. While reading a book is an experience, and you do experience these awesome characters and settings, and you have an emotional reaction to everything. Like, if I'm looking for some alternative art or something, I'm going to go down to the art museum or go to an indie film festival or something where that's what's, you know, that's a more appropriate medium, or throw in some weird music. But when you're reading a book, I mean, it has to be a story. Just like you wouldn't record an entire CD of, like, silence and people dancing in the background. It's like, well, no, that's not music. There needs to be at least something there. And there are glimmers of a story in there, like you said, but it's definitely not enough to constitute, like, 50-pound book.
What this book reminds me of is kind of like the Blair Witch. And if they say the Blair Witch, you had just the found footage that it was supposed to be, but then if they decided to make that movie where most of it was documenting, like a documentary about the Blair Witch, then that's kind of what this book would read as. Like some found footage, and then everything, you know, for the readers who haven't checked this out, it's just like you're reading a documentary about the Blair Witch, and then you also get some points of the Blair Witch in there. And that's not fun. If you're of a certain mind frame or age, maybe this book would hit you different, like we talked about previously. But for me, it's not hitting the right notes. I'm not feeling Johnny Truant. I'm not getting his experience. I get bored.
It's similar to my reaction to Chuck Palahniuk's stuff, especially the book Haunted. It was like he wrote that book to be edgy and shock value and all that. And I mean, that's going to appeal to, like, teens and young adults that maybe haven't experienced life. Maybe they've had a sheltered life or whatever. But after you've been out in the real world and you've read some things and you go back and read it, this is my experience right now. It's just like, why the crap did I like this in the first place? Like, this is just, man, I was stupid. Personal growth.
Dude, I hated Haunted.
Yeah.
It was terrible. I thought all the stories in there were terrible. Like you said, it was just gore for gore. But if I read that when I was in 7th grade, it's like South Park Scrody McBoogerballs. I would think it was the greatest fucking thing ever written. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. It's got everything I want. Guts, throwing up, poop. Like, because that's all you know when you're at that age. You haven't had experiences, but when you actually live some shit, you're like, no, this life isn't like this. This is stupid.
Yeah.
Not to mention every character in there was awful. I talk about how I don't like some of the characters in here. Every character in that book was terrible.
Yeah, that's the exact same reaction I had to that one novel, The Vegetarian, that I read. I read like 70 pages and I gave up because all the characters were terrible. It was like, none of you have any redemptive qualities. It's like you start and then you continue talking. It's like, just stop. Stop while you're ahead. Let me like you for a little bit.
Just a little bit. I just need just a little.
I just need a little love.
Ooh, baby. There was a couple parts that I thought were pretty cool in this. I like the SOS through the wall when I forget who it was. Somebody was pounding. Maybe it was Holloway pounding on the wall or something. But on the inside the actual house, it came out as like a SOS. That was neat. I forget who said this line. Again, I just wrote notes, but I didn't have... Yeah, but somebody wrote about even explorers refuse to ask for directions. Kind of like that.
Yeah.
It was kind of a hit on just, men never asking for directions. I'm sure that was one of the lady folks. Maybe Karen was being snarky or something.
Karen.
Such a Karen. I really liked when, Jed, he has, I think, Wax, who got shot. They're running from Holloway, and they end up in the little rooms or corridors or something. And then they think there's a monster on the other side of the door pounding on the door. And then later on, I think it skips a few chapters. I forget how long exactly. But when it gets back to it, it's Navison and Reston who came to rescue them. But it was like a big gap in time, it seemed like. But I guess it wasn't. So that was really cool.
Yeah, that was really nifty. And I liked how that corridor doors... I'm not a huge fan. I can appreciate the formatting quite a bit because it is interesting, even if it's horrible for storytelling. It's still fun to get your hands on and experience firsthand. But one area where I liked the formatting was when the doors in that corridor were shutting between like Holloway and Wax and all them. And it was just because it was like every single page was one of the doors shutting, and it just gave you that feeling of, because you're slamming the pages as you go. It's like, oh, that was cool.
Yeah, I like that. That was pretty sweet. He has, like I said, the formatting worked for me in certain moments. If it wasn't for the pages and pages of lists that you won't ever read, or list in Italian, or list of random names, or, squares that have list of just random household items, like all that stuff, that was stupid. Like, it just, I don't know if it's supposed to make you feel claustrophobic reading it, or make your mind cluttered as you read it, but I didn't enjoy that. I have a note here, and I don't remember what it is in regards to. Something about the Holocaust in the house. It's on page 189.
Rushing over.
189. Let's see. It was about a kid drawing houses, I believe. But there was some kind of very intelligent remark I was going to make, but that was last week, and I lost it when I started reading all this drivel. Let's see.
It's like constructions of house and the rigidity.
See, there's a knob on the door. People go in the house.
I don't know where the Holocaust thing came from. I liked that in that section on 189, the second paragraph down is it's talking about how a lot of kids don't put doorknobs on doors, and they say this is a kinesthetic sign so frequently forgotten in the drawings of tense children.
Right.
I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that was cool. Maybe I wrote the page number down wrong. No, there was definitely something about the Holocaust, and it was, I'm not going to be able to remember it now. I thought it had something to do with the kids from the Holocaust drawing the houses or doors or something, and it had something to do with trauma, and like maybe the house was a manifestation of trauma or something. I don't remember. I lost, because his kids were also drawing. Remember in school, their pages were just black, and they were drawing, pretty much the house, but it was growing. So eventually the pages, they might have had borders, but at some point they didn't have anything. It was just solid black. Yeah, I don't remember. It was one of those things that I was reading at like midnight out of work, and the next morning I was like, I should just jot this down real quick. I should have used sticky notes. I didn't think I was going to go too deep into this.
Yeah, it's like he has all these really cool... It seems like he's an idea guy. It's like there are people that kind of daydream and stuff all the time, and they never write. There are writers who probably should spend more time daydreaming and thinking of something interesting before they write. Jim's back. And then there's like these guys that... Danielewski seems like he's more of a daydreamer, more of an idea guy, and he doesn't know quite how to put his daydreams or his really nifty ideas and excerpts into a story, so he just kind of meshes it all and hopes that it works.
I feel like he comes up with his ideas in a visual format. So if this was like a movie or a TV show or something, like, like I feel like this writing is made to be viewed almost, like a lot of it. And even like a lot of the Johnny Truant stuff reads like you're just daydreaming, just like things run on. And I know it's like some of it's supposed to be his madness, but where he does that with inebriation too, when people are drunk or something, it kind of just goes and rambles. And maybe it's just a hint of realism he was going for. But when you read it, it doesn't always seem to hit the mark that I think it was intended to. I mean, sometimes it does. I mean, I definitely get Stephen King's, opinion that this is the Moby Dick of horror, because it definitely is. Because like I said before, Moby Dick has so much nonsense about whaling and bullshit. I'm surprised there isn't a section in here on whaling and what it means to the dark depths of the ocean in regards to the eternal blackness of a endless hallway. It's just stupid. I don't care. Oh man.
Yeah, it's when I was reading this, I had like a little sticky note app on my computer screen, and it was like it just in a moment of desperation, because I hit a really dry, pointless blotch of like French or something like that. Like, what the crap? Like, why is this in here? And so I wrote out like, what's the point of this book? And then I was just doing that because I was frustrated. But then afterwards, I was really thinking on it, and I find that books either are meant to inform or they're meant to entertain, and this doesn't really do either for me. Like, maybe, I'm sure it entertains as somewhere out there. Every book has its audience, but as a whole, generally, you write a book to entertain people, not to.
Well, I think this is definitely the modern art approach, where it's supposed to be something you experience. And, you go to a modern art exhibit, a guy like me, I see red circles mixed with yellow circles. I go, okay. But then you have people that are studying it and they're going into the deeper meaning. And I feel like that's what he was going for in this. I just, again, maybe I'm not the audience for this book. I mean, I like good horror. I don't even feel like this is a horror book, even though that's what people classify it as, because when it might get scary, like when they're in the, the endless corridors and all that stuff, what is that? Like, if you actually combined that whole story, the Navison records, like that whole part, the actual story part, you probably get maybe a solid 2 chapters out of it, if that. Because it's so scattered and broken up. I just don't feel like... And I feel like there wasn't even, as of now, not even a real completion to that. Because where I'm at now, Navison, he went back to the house and then he just disappeared, but it didn't go into like him in the house or anything yet. So I don't know what the fuck. But let's see. But I stopped right before the book gets all wonky again, so I am kind of excited to see what happens there. Like, I'm on 423, which is the Braille. And then it just, like, everything goes sideways. And all. So hopefully that gets... And then it looks like a bunch of Johnny Truant stuff. But going backwards a little bit, the whole thing about Karen, there could not have been a worse part of this book for me as the whole chapter about Karen.
Yeah, that prolonged transcript.
And then breaking down her psyche, and I feel like I'm watching fucking Dateline here. Like, why do I need to know her childhood trauma and need an actual psychiatrist telling me what they think about it? And like, endless fucking footnotes too, dude.
Yeah, and I was like, if she had been a more central figure and character, other than just seemingly being in the story to be a bad person. And it sounds almost like she's kind of a bad mom, too, because she'll be like, the kids will be playing or something.
Neglects them.
She says, yeah, and she just kind of ignores them, or, she's like, oh, my only job is to make sure that they don't get hurt or something. I was like, that's a babysitter's job. A parent's job is...
She makes them watch each other.
Yeah, it's like,
She does... Okay. Like the Chad, the son, he just randomly isn't in the house anymore for most of the story. He's just outside in the woods or in the tree, like, and they don't care. Like, come on.
Yeah.
But there are handfuls of moments that really made me hate her guts. One, when it talked about her refusing to marry Navison because I forget, because she wanted to be a whore, I guess. She kissed that dude in the kitchen during these explorations, like right before they started. It's like, come on, what the fuck is that? there was the whole section about her infidelities when she was in New York and stuff. Like, they just made her out to be like the worst person. I did not like her character. She ignores the kids, but at the same time, she doesn't want, like, Daniel Lewski tries to make it like she cares about Navison so much, even though she keeps cheating on him and stuff, but she cares about him so much that she won't let him go into the blackness to investigate with everybody else, which brings Holloway to his peak of douchiness, and she won't let him do that, and if he does, then she's going to move out, and she's pretty much gave him an ultimatum. And I always hate that in, like, movies and stuff. Like, it reminds me of the old boxing movie trope where it's like, you take this fight, I'm gonna take the kids and I'm leaving. It's like, well, leave, bitch. I'm gonna fight. Like, I don't care.
Come on, Catherine. Really?
Really? You take Nikki and Peppers and you go. I don't care. I'm gonna fight. I'm a man. I gotta fight here, Sharon. I gotta. That's just a trope that I feel should have just died in the 80s. The woman hindering the man of, holding him back from his greatness. Like, come on. Just stop doing that. That's stupid. Well, how about we actually get a woman that supports the man and wants him to be great? That's what I would like to read.
Yeah.
Or finds her own greatness. How about that? Even better yet. The woman is the greatness, and maybe the man's a piece of shit and holding her back for selfish reasons.
Yeah, there you go.
There we go. Flip it on its ass.
Yeah, I don't see the point of her really, and you're coming to like so you're at the part where Will goes back into the house, right? That's what you just said?
He went back in the house and has disappeared, and Karen has inexplicably moved back into the house herself.
Yeah, okay.
But now is like having a great time, but then like the blackness opened up behind her while she's watching a movie, so shit's gonna go down, I guess.
I remember there's like a really cheesy eye roll portion with her, and it's like, no, you're trying to make me like her or trying to redeem her, and there's not. That's like, hey, I just killed all these 12 people, but I mowed your lawn for you.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, but you still killed 12 people, so you're still a bad person.
You still suck ass.
She might. She's a whore, so.
Oh, I'm sure she does. I'm glad that they made her start to get real ugly and stuff. Kind of like Johnny Truant, who just, at the end of this so far, he just got rotting teeth and has become a freak. I like the Delisle, I think her name was. The little African girl in Sudan which was, well, I think they actually mentioned it, so it's not really stealing, but like the famous Pulitzer Prize winning photo of the vulture over the starving African child.
Yeah.
Pretty much also happened to Navison, I guess, and he won a Pulitzer Prize for it. And unlike the actual photojournalist who ended up committing suicide because of that, it shows like Navison going through similar emotions since that happened. And he was screaming that girl's name in his sleep, and Karen always wondered who it was. And he, that was drawn out throughout, just sprinkled in there, though, just enough to remind you that it was there, so you wanted to know what happened. And then they finally tell you what it was, and I really did like that part.
Yeah.
And I thought that was actually a good character development on his part, because it shows maybe why he is so obsessive and why he wants to go in this house so much, because he didn't save that girl, and maybe he felt like he could have. And then Tom died right in front of him. He didn't save Tom, and he almost felt like he was the one that should have died. He should have been in there saving his own kid, not his brother. So that kind of touched me. I did like that. And that's what my problem with this fucking book is. There are parts like that, so I can't just give up on it, because I like that stuff.
Yeah, like I said, I feel like he wanted to write a book, but he didn't know how to. And so he was just kind of like, oh, well, I wrote this short story for my dying dad, and then I shredded it into confetti. What else can I add to this now that my sister's taped it back up to make it even longer? It's like, well, everything except a story. Perfect.
Yay.
All right.
Not to mention all the parts with the X's. I think that was just because he couldn't read what he wrote, because he was in that dumpster and it was too dark. You know what else really, really infuriated me? The random section where there was just chunks of words, like chunks out of the words missing for way too long. So you'd get like the word through, but the O and U were gone, and like it was just enough to disrupt your reading. But then at some points it really disrupted your reading if you hit a word that you don't you haven't memorized through reading a bunch of times. So it's just like, I want to go through this faster, not slower. I don't want to slow down. Maybe he just felt like his audience would be so bored by this point that he had to slow them down and get them back into it.
I was looking it up, trying to figure out how he did all the formatting and stuff, and I guess he did it himself. Like, he flew to the publisher's headquarters, and he did all the typesetting and stuff like that with some special program, because he's like, no, only I can be trusted with, the format, but the vision of this book. I was like, dude, every writer feels like, no, I don't want an editor to mess with my story, but in the end, it actually helps. You knew that?
Yeah.
And that could have really helped you.
Yeah, I would imagine somebody going through and just being like, hey, maybe not replace every S with an F for 10 pages. That's kind of annoying, because some words get a little messed up. Like, what was the one that threw me off? I think it was the word suck. You replace the S with an F, and I was like, wait a minute, what's happening? It's like, oh, come on, dude. Why? It was stupid. I don't know why he made that choice. I don't know why he makes a lot of the choices he made, other than to be shocking and new and fancy and a douche.
I mean, it got him famous, so I guess there's that.
Yeah, I mean, he's pretty much the drunken hobo on the street that got his big break, I guess.
Yeah, it sounds like he got the big break, and then he wrote a book of poetry called, I think it's Only Revolutions or something like that. And you can read it backwards and forwards, because there's two different timelines on the top and the bottom. Of course, you can't do anything normal.
Yeah.
But he also, like, with the familiar stuff, I just looked it up right now. I guess Pantheon Publishers, like his publisher, they dropped it after like volume 5, because sales were completely abysmal. I was like, yeah, dude, like, everyone wants House of Leaves because it's like reading, the Old Man and the Sea or Pride and Prejudice. So it's just like one of those things. Stephen King's The Shining.
Yeah.
You don't read any other Stephen King, you're going to read The Shining because that's like quintessential. And
exactly.
This is kind of one of them, and it's like, yeah, that's the only reason people are kind of buying your book, dude. It's never going to be made into a movie. You can't, and it's like it's just sort of different, and that's why people read it.
There was probably only one guy who was buying The Familiar by the 5th volume, and that guy's name was suspiciously Donnie Fruant. Just some random dude, like, wait a minute, something's going on here. And he happens to just have Daniel Lusky's home address as his address for his Amazon shipping.
His phone number and everything listed.
Yeah.
Mark.
Are you buying your own book?
I've been over here in my dumpster the whole time.
I will say, this guy put a great deal of effort into this book. I will give him that. It looks like if he put his mind to it, he could write a solid story, maybe. I can't tell if he can actually do a beginning, middle, and end of something. But like you said, the daydreaming, he definitely has the ideas. The ideas are cool, and ideas can take you a long way, as this has shown. But the execution of those ideas is just as important, in my opinion. And if this book came out, if there was already a House of Leaves style book, this probably would have never came out. Nobody would have gave a shit. It's just because it was so original and new.
Yeah.
Much like, as I, just go back to it, The Blair Witch. The Blair Witch was original and cool at the time, but everything after that was stupid found footage movies. They all suck. Nobody wants to see shaky camera and awful dialogue. It's just, the first of something is cool. After that, it's like, okay, we get it. Let's do something new.
You can have a handful of people, kind of like in the Beat generation. Now, you had Kerouac and all them that were William S. Burroughs that were kind of new. They were these poets, they were these novelists writing about edgy, nasty, uncomfortable topics like drug addiction, and that's cool. That's interesting. It definitely is a breath of fresh air after reading, decades of nothing but Hemingway.
Mm-hmm.
However, you got to progress from that. You can't only write, Beat generation stuff, and that's when we got the kind of revival of horror in the late 70s and 80s and all that, but it's like this definitely had a very select time period I think it thrived in. And
yeah, now it just petered out.
It's on plenty of like top 50 most difficult breeds. I was like, yeah, you're not kidding.
Well, the hilarious thing about this book is it has not aged well just because the revolution of technology since then. It was like a little thing. He called it a cellular phone. Just because, there was new 2000. That was something. But it's just like, well, technology would really change this whole House of Leaves story now, like the way things are. So, that'd be kind of cool to revisit it if you had a modern lens. Like, oh, maybe somebody else bought the house, but now it's modern technology. You could do some things with that. That'd be kind of neat. Not with all this random other bullshit we don't need. Because everybody in this book that is giving information for the Navison record just wrote an encyclopedia on the Navison record.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, we had to condense this because it was 800 pages. Oh, why would somebody write 800 pages on this?
I was looking up some summaries and everything like that because someone would be like, am I crazy for thinking X, Y, or Z? And it's like, by our summary, it's, 789 pages, or this one is 1,200 pages of summary. I was like, that's not a summary.
That's bigger than the actual novel.
That's I don't know where you got your definition of summary, but that's not it.
Well, just to change gears for a second, since we're about out of time anyway, so good as time as any. Like I told you off air, I've been really trying to plow through this book because I just fucking want to end it so I can read something better. So,
yeah.
I have a Japanese noir book called Grotesque, which is about dead hookers or something. It sounds very interesting. And unfortunately, I just got it in the mail today, and I did not realize it was like 600 pages. So I was like, oh, that was a poor choice. Like another doorstop. I wanted a break from the doorstops. Should have looked up the page count before I got that. But we are going to read, if you wanted to hop aboard, a book called The Black by... It's one of the inspirations for this podcast, the Dead Robot Society podcast. One of the current hosts, his name's Paul E. Cooley. He's a pretty successful, indie author, and he goes through, a lot of small presses and stuff. The Black is, from what I remember, about a oil well team, I think, drilling in the ocean, and I want to say they uncover some kind of giant monster of the deep. So that seems like that'll be a little fun read to get into after this House of Leaves. So if you want to jump aboard that, me and Spencer are going to do an episode on it just for fun.
Alright. Sounds kind of Cthulhu-esque almost.
Yeah, he mainly seems to write horror and hard sci-fi. I wouldn't say hard sci-fi, maybe space. What is that genre? Like Space Marines, whatever that genre is. He writes a lot of stuff in that. So I'm very interested because I listened to him for years on the podcast, but I've never actually checked out his work. So it's got good reviews and stuff, and they have a good following. So he must know what he's doing. So that'll be interesting, whether it's Godzilla or Cthulhu or something. My only problem, I think it's like a trilogy or something. So I'll probably just read the first book like I do everything else. I read Dune and I loved it, and I did not read the other 15 editions of Dune. I couldn't get into it. It's too much.
I'm trying to look it up. Who's the author?
Paul E. Cooley.
The Black and then book, and it's bringing up a bunch of racist stuff.
Not surprising. Yeah, if you look the Black up on Pornhub, it comes up very different. No, look Paul E. Cooley, Cooley. And it's just The Black.
Oh, there we go.
Because I forget how much that was. I ordered the paperback, though, because I am a paperback type of guy.
Ah, it's even got a tentacle on the front.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested and aroused.
I got it in the mail yesterday, and it's actually a pretty big... not page count-wise, but, just the width of it and stuff. It's like the House of Leaves. It's kind of wide and tall, so interesting. I like the choice. But at worst, it's terrible, and we don't actually put out the episode, because I don't want to shit on somebody that I might go on their podcast at some point.
That's probably wise.
Yeah, but it should be pretty good, because he has a lot of fans, so... I guess that doesn't mean... James Patterson has fans, too. And Daniel Lusky has one fan, so... Not me. A bunch of modern art fucks. Guys named Shiloh and Skylar. Just a quick reprieve before we end this. how has your writing been going? I have not talked to you about it lately.
It's going. Did a weird piece that I finished while I was at my in-laws' house, and I was hyped up on painkillers at that time. So
that'll be interesting. That's the one you sent me, didn't you? That's the one for DPW?
Say what?
Is that the one for DPW?
Yeah.
I will be checking that. I still haven't had time to read it. I was, what day did you send that to me?
Either Saturday or Sunday, I think.
Right. I ended up doing, over the weekend, a float tank session at the, some float lab, which was very interesting. Then got a bunch of Indian food, and it was a very interesting weekend. But I did not get any reading or writing done. And then I got in a fucking Spanish competition with some Japanese lady, so that's a long story. Anyway, if you folks want to get in on some sweet book talk, you can give us some ideas of what you think we should read at hit us up on drunkenpenwriting.com, or probably a little bit faster, hit us up on Twitter at drunkpenwriting. Though I will say, my personal Twitter, I am becoming very disenfranchised and just seem not to care too much. I don't know about you, Mr. Ashleigh Hatter, but I am very, very done with Twitter, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty much there in the same boat. I'm over all the griping and self-inflation and all that stuff. I'm done inflating myself. I think that's what I'm getting at.
No more self-inflation. I kind of did a little test here to see, like, I would do just a random tweet about books or something like that to see what I would get, and then I forget when I did like a poll to see what that, like a generic stupid poll, and of course the poll did what, like, better. So I'm thinking, like, it is really the superficial dumb stuff people go for on there. That's not why I'm trying to connect with people. So I don't know where I go. Maybe I'll just try to make a name on Goodreads or something. At least there's writers and readers on there that like to talk about writing and reading, unlike the actual writers, quotation marks, on Twitter.
The eye roll was palpable in that.
I've just heard or read so many status or tweets about, like, today it was just all polls. Like, I scrolled through for about 1 minute and it was just all polls on random stuff. Again, what's your protagonist's favorite colored underwear? Like, just why? What is this? You're just trying to get people to read, to interact with you, I guess. But what's the point if there's no substance? And of course it gets like 80 retweets and 50 comments. I'm like, who gives a fuck? Like, why are you talking about this? Go write something.
It's like, oh my, hashtag writer's life. I haven't been able to write today. I was like, yeah, it's because all you do is talk about writing. Like,
you just talk about
you need to actually sit down and put words to paper if you want to be a writer. Stop aspiring to be a writer.
Good sir, it is the romantic notion and idea of what it is to be a writer that people like more than the actual writing, because writing is work. They like to see, the ideals of Hemingway and maybe a Jack Kerouac crossing the country, or even like a, rest in peace Anthony Bourdain, where you go across the world, you go to these fancy places and you write about it. It's cool. You go to Paris, Eau de Paris, you sit and eat baguettes with French people. I don't know. Like, they like that idea, but they don't like the idea of actually sitting down and writing, which what great writers do? They write. You know what phonies do? They talk about writing. We should start I'm trying to think of a good name for it. Some kind of association where we just talk shit on fake writers. Kind of like what hipsters do with everybody. They just talk about, oh, you're not down with the scene. You're just a pretender. You're a poser. I want to be like that. Like the old 80s punk guy who hates on people that think they're punk. Like that, what was it? SLC Punk. That, you ever see that movie?
I don't think so.
It's an awesome movie starring Matthew Lillard. I think it was from the 90s. And it's about the Salt Lake City punk scene. And I want to say the 80s or early 90s. And, like, the one guy in it, like, everybody has mohawks and all this crazy shit. But the one guy is dressed, like, literally like Steve Urkel. He has, the button-up striped shirt and big glasses, but he's like the hardest punk motherfucker out of them all. He beats up cops and all kinds of stuff. So, like that's what I think of when I think of writers. It's like it's not the person talking about writing in writer's life. It's the one that's actually writing and doing shit. Like that's the fucking real writer. It doesn't matter what they look like or what they're like. It's the work content that comes out. And I am not seeing that on Twitter. I do not see quality work for the most part because I've checked out people's books, like excerpts and stuff, and I'm just like, really? Come on now.
Preach.
Yeah, preach, motherfucker. Whoop, whoop. And I mean, as you know, because you introduced me to a certain writer group, I will not name any names, and I'm pretty sure none of them check out the podcast because they don't check out anything that anybody posts because they're so self-indulged with their own stuff. But there are certain people that I've experienced firsthand that literally just talk and talk and talk, and they don't listen at all. So what are you interacting for? What is the point? But I regress. I'm drinking this fancy Founders Rubos Pure Red. I don't even know how to say this word. R-U with 2 dots over it. B-A-E-U-S. And the A and U are connected. Or the A and E are connected. It's fancy. That's what it is.
Sounds European. I don't like it.
Well, Founders isn't European, but it does sound a little European. They don't wear pants when they go to the beach. Well, I guess nobody does. They don't wear swim trunks when they go to the beach. They wear Speedos or thongs, and that's weird.
I don't like it.
They're overly tan, and they don't have muscle tone, and they're very hairy in places that don't deserve hair. I should probably go to Europe before I start talking shit about Europeans, especially since a lot of our listeners come from the UK now.
Wow.
Yeah, that's in case you wonder, we got a good chunk, maybe 10% of the listening podcast listeners come from the UK and Australia, and surprisingly South Africa, and I have not nailed that market. I don't know how to appeal to South Africans.
Oh, I don't know. That's interesting, though.
Yeah. I mean, I noticed that's the only part of Africa that's like white people, but still, that's a step in the right direction.
You need to sound more ethnic, and then you'll get some more views on the other side of the world.
To be fair, I probably sound ethnic to the other side of the world because Americans, and especially me, since I'm from closer to the Pittsburgh area, have terrible accents to anybody else, especially the British folk. You got one of them old Missouri type accents out there in the Midwest.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Hey there, hoss. You know what I is talking about. Alabama man. Well, didn't Missouri just get hit with another series of just horrible floods?
Yes, it did.
That's wonderful news, huh? I'm glad I never saw that on the news at all. I just had to look it up.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure God's mad at us or something like that, because it won't stop.
What did Missouri do to anybody? You guys have seemed like you haven't been doing any fuckery or lately.
I don't know what we do. We're just here.
I don't know. You're just too flat or something, I guess. Too close to rivers or some shit.
Maybe it's punishment for not doing anything. It's like, Missouri.
You know what? I'm pretty sure Missouri invented the gambling steamboats of yesterday. Maybe that's what you're getting punished for. I really don't know. Where's Mississippi? Does Mississippi River run through Missouri?
Along our east side.
Woo, that is fucking cool, man. I don't know about your fancy river. Our fancy Allegheny River's brown, so... It's actually 2 shades of brown because it connects with the Ohio River, and you have 2 separate browns that don't mix, and I think that's strange. I was like, what is this water made of where the browns don't mix? There's a solid line. I think that's really weird.
It's kind of disturbing.
I think one's swamp water and one's, I don't know, poo water or something.
Poo.
Wonder how much of this I'm going to have to cut out of the actual podcast episode.
Hey, we didn't make any dick jokes.
You know what? I don't think... Me and Spencer just did a brainstorming episode for a novel that he's going to write, apparently. And I don't believe we talked about dicks once. So that's a record. Wait a minute. No penises. We talked about other organs, but no penises.
It'll be interesting to see the views on that one. If they go way down, you're going to have to throw lots of dicks in the next one.
Oh, there's going to be lots of dicks regardless because I can't get... Well, now we kind of broke it. Now we're talking about dicks. Why does it always be dicks? Makes me want to read that noir book even more now. I don't know if Japanese get the whole private dick the old detective references there. I don't know what it's like. I mean, I should have probably read a regular noir before I went to it, because I don't have any experience in reading old crime fiction, so reading random Japanese crime fiction is going to be a treat, I guess. I don't know what to expect.
I've never read it either, so I don't know what to tell you.
One guy put it in his top 5 classics of all time, up there with Old Man and the Sea, East of Eden, books like that, so I'm thinking it's going to be pretty solid.
Right.
Or it's going to be hot garbage, I don't know. Somebody else said it was trash, so we'll see. I like me some Japanese fiction, I just don't always like the translations. Well, anyway, we should probably end this episode. We're well over the hour mark, and I mean, I could ramble nonsense for hours, but I don't really want to. I feel like I ramble more just because the fucking book was so boring. Like, the stupid House of Leaves.
Like struggling to find something interesting to talk about. It's like, oh my god.
Like, I try to break some, meaning out of it that's not already overly established in the book to death, so I would say for the next episode, maybe we should just try to finish this bitch. Do you think you could finish it by next week?
I'll sniff some meth and get through it or something like that.
Well, like I said, I'm at the, hold on, let me finger this bad boy real quick. So I'm at 423. It looks like literally 1.5 pages of solid text, and then it goes into about 20 pages of just 3-word nonsense kind of stuff. Goes back into some dense text. So it looks like you only actually have a solid maybe chapter of real writing, and the rest is just nonsense. You could probably finish it by, a couple days, if that. Well, I mean, you're a little farther behind than me, but I think I could finish this bitch in about 1 hour and 22 minutes.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, Mark Z's Daniel Lusky going to get a bad review from me on the Goodreads. I wish they did half stars. He'd get 2.5 whole stars. That didn't even make sense. 2.5 whole stars.
2.5 whole stars.
Yeah, boy. Oh, man. I feel like I should wear a Flavor Flav clock when I read this book. Maybe that's just me. I don't know why. I get the urge. Maybe some iced out grills.
Can't go away.
I feel like when I read this book, I'm listening to Tech 9 in reverse. Does that make sense? Like, it's just really fast rapping in reverse. I'm like, I never really don't understand what this gentleman is saying.
It's got a funky beat, though.
Ooh, it's so funky. All right. Well, we hope you folks have the best of evenings. Or mornings, I don't know. What time is it in South Africa right now? I have no idea. South Africans love our House of Leaves discussion. Maybe this book's huge over there. I don't know. See you folks later.